Why is it that you can be doing so well in life and still feel like you're never doing enough or you're still never enough? It might be at work, in your personal life, social life, anywhere. Well, by the end of this video, you're going to understand why that feeling shows up so often in capable, high functioning, high performing people and where it really comes from. Plus, I'm going to help you spot this hidden comparison trap that keeps this pressure to do more alive so that you can stop trying to fix it by doing more. So, what is this invisible pattern? Well, if you're someone that has high standards, you like to do things well, you tend to push yourself, then I'm guessing that this voice that I'm talking about shows up quite a lot. Now, I'm actually hearing a lot of people say these days, oh, my standards are too high. I need to let go. I need to be a bit cooler about this. I disagree. I think we need more people with high standards. You know, we need to lift our ideal of what is actually good enough in the workplace, in relationships, in service. So I don't want you to think that there's anything wrong with you if you have high standards. It only becomes a problem if the belief or this pattern underneath is telling you, I should be doing more, when you're already kicking goals. So, what does this actually look like? It might be that you get to the end of the day, you finish a big piece of work, and instead of feeling that sense of satisfaction, your attention goes straight to the next thing. What didn't I get done? What still needs to be finished? What have I missed? What needs fixing? Right. And so that internal pressure that we feel there, that internal voice, it's often made worse by comparison as well. So you notice what other people seem to be achieving, how they put together or how put together their lives appear and how easily things look like they're moving for them, for other people, right? Oh my goodness, it's happening for them, it's not happening for me. And without even realizing it, your own efforts, they kind of start to feel a bit smaller or, not as good by comparison. And over time, this pattern, it creates this sense that nothing is ever quite good enough, right? Nothing that you do is ever quite good enough. And it's really easy to fall into a bit of a slump here and thinking, oh gosh, I'm completely failing at this. I'm doing a bad job. But it's not. You're not, right? It's because your attention has actually been trained to scan for what's missing rather than recognize what has already been done. Right? So this is a survival response. You might have heard me talking about this before. From an evolutionary perspective, your brain it's not built to make you feel accomplished. It's not even made to feel you happy. Wouldn't that be amazing if it was? It is designed to scan for problems. It's designed to keep you alert. So even when things are going well, that part of your brain, the fast part, the lizard brain, the crocodile brain, whatever you want to call it, it's the automatic part. It's looking for what is missing, or what's next, or what needs improvement. Now, this part of the brain works really well if you're in real danger because it's an instant reaction. It can get us out of danger. It's not so great when we're trying to have a weekend off, enjoy the weekend, or you're feeling good about finishing your to-do list, that's you've had there for weeks or months. And, let's face it, how often are we in real danger these days? It's so rare that it doesn't even bear thinking about. And yet our brain still works as though we are constantly in danger. So what makes this worse is that our modern work culture, which is very outdated, it's a structure that was created perhaps in the 1950s. I mean, we're 76 years down the road, and yet so many organizations still work to this very outdated culture. So what makes this worse is that The modern workplace culture, it rewards output, right? It rewards achievement. It rewards always being on, always contactable. I've even heard people in high positions in organizations say you always need to be available. Even when you're on holidays, we need to be able to contact you. We all have KPIs. And so we're rewarding this output, achievement, workplace. So even when you are doing enough, your brain doesn't get the signal. There's always more you could be doing, right? And of course, there's always more we could do. There's, an endless list, especially if we like to grow. If growth is important to us, there's always going to be something else we can do. But does it actually need to be done right now? And I've seen this happen in my own work life too, not currently, but in a previous role I had a long time ago. We were working on a really big project. It's one of those long projects. I think it was probably a 12-month project. And every time I caught up with my manager, they'd say, we're getting there, but there's still so far to go. Every single time. And it got to the point where I dreaded these catch-ups. I just didn't want to hear that again. And I remember after I'd heard it for about, I don't know, the 73rd time, I finally stopped and said, you know what? When you say that, it actually takes away from everything that we have achieved. Can we just celebrate where we are for a moment before moving on? And when I said that, the first response was silence, right? But it was a considered silence. And I actually received an apology. It was an acknowledgement. They said, yeah, you know what, Beck, you're right. There will always be more to do. But what we've achieved so far is incredible and it's worth celebrating. Well done, to you and the team. And that's all I needed was an acknowledgement. That's all my brain needed to go, oh, yes, okay, we have achieved so far what we set out to achieve. Well done. That's enough. And then eventually we could move on. Because when we have that constant focus on what's still ahead, it can start to feel like you're never going to get there, right? Like nothing is ever going to be good enough. Like the work that you've done even isn't good enough, even when you are moving forward. And this is actually also where social media really pours fuel on the fire. Most of us spend time each day looking at social media. We look at other people's lives through social media with a lens. Like this is a very narrow lens. So we see the wins, we see the progress updates, the announcements. Look what I've built. Oh, look, my business is pulling in $80,000 a month. My kids go to the most expensive school in the state. I have enough beautiful clothes to wear a different outfit every day. Oh, look how many times I went to the gym last week. Now, people don't actually say those things, but that's what we're hearing. That's what we're seeing, right? So I'm not saying that this stuff isn't real. It is, or that we shouldn't celebrate with our friends. But what we don't see is the context around this. Now, I know that you know this logically, but there is an unconscious part that isn't getting through here. All right, so we don't see when we look at those reels, we don't see the tired mornings. We don't see the self-doubt that business owner had at the beginning. We don't see the days where the creativity didn't flow, or we don't see the help that people get in the background so that they can do all of these things or achieve these things. We are looking at the highlight reel while we're living inside our own reality, our own behind the scenes reality, right? And we have a behind the scenes reality, so does everyone else. So what makes this tricky is that our brain doesn't label this as comparison. It treats it as information. It treats it as a fact because your brain only understands black and white, zeros and ones. It takes in what it's seeing and starts recalibrating what is normal, what is successful, or what enough looks like. So even if you're doing well by any reasonable measure, your internal benchmark keeps shifting. The goalposts keep shifting. You know, so what used to feel like progress or achievement now feels ordinary. What used to feel like you were doing well, it now feels expected, like you should be doing that and then more. And without realizing it, you start measuring your very real effort against a very curated snapshot of someone else's life. And that is when this voice probably gets louder, this pressure intensifies. Your life, it hasn't suddenly become inadequate. It's just that the reference point that you're using, that you're measuring by, has changed. And this is where identity comes into it. For many high performers, productivity slowly becomes more than something you do. It becomes part of how you see yourself, your identity. So being capable, reliable, effective, all of these things matter to you. You like contributing, you like doing good work, but over time, it can turn into a measure of your value, of your worth. And it's not a conscious decision. So this is, we're not sitting here going, oh, this is how I'm measuring myself. I'm only worth this much. This is an unconscious decision, right? It happens without you even realizing it. So how much you get done, how well you perform, and how much of a load that you can carry, this starts to feel really personal. And that's often why for people at this level, slowing down feels really uncomfortable. Sitting back, taking a break, or moving at a slightly slower pace, feels really uncomfortable, right? Something that you don't want to do. So you're always moving fast. It's not necessarily that you don't know how to rest. I'm sure you've done it before. But what's happening is when you stop, there's this strange sense of guilt, or perhaps it's just unease. Even your body starts to do this, or a feeling that you should be doing something more useful with your time. So that's why this feeling doesn't go away just because you tell yourself to relax. Just because you say, hey, I'm on holiday now, it's time to relax. That doesn't necessarily work, because this is not about effort, this is about identity. So when this shows up, the most common response for people is to do more. We work a little bit harder. If we're at work, we stay a little bit longer. We tighten our standards or lift our standards a little bit further. And sometimes you even tell yourself, I'll just get through this stretch and then I'll slow down. I just need to get this done. Then I'll feel better. Then I can rest. Okay, but the problem is that this approach actually reinforces that very pattern that you are trying to escape, or that's creating this unease. So your brain is hearing slowing down is something that I have to earn rather than something I'm allowed to do. So the goalposts move again. And this is why so many capable, high functioning, high performing people feel constantly worn down. Even when they're doing really well, we don't become exhausted and worn out because we're incapable, not at all. We get this feeling, we get worn down, we feel exhausted because we're running an internal system that never hears, you're enough. You can stop now. It never hears that. So until that rule or that belief is addressed, we continue to feed that loop by doing more. So if you've been nodding along throughout this video, I want to say this very clearly. This is not a time management thing, all right? This is not about learning to manage your time better, about color coding your calendar, right? This is not about motivation. I don't even like that word motivation, right? And it's not about lowering your standards. As I've already said, having high standards, it's a great thing. This is about understanding why, even when you're doing well, it still doesn't feel like it's enough. Like this little voice inside your head or inside your body. And if something here has clicked while you've been watching along, while you've been listening, if you've had that, oh, yeah, that's me moment, then thinking about it more is not going to help. This is the time to do something about it. And to that end, I'm running a live online masterclass. It's called How to Stop Overthinking and Make Clear Decisions. So it is for capable people who know something needs to change, but they feel stuck thinking about the how and the when. That's what trips us up the most, right? So in this session, I'm going to take you through what's actually happening when your mind keeps going through these loops, why insight alone hasn't shifted it. So while reading all the books and listening to all the podcasts isn't going to shift it, and what needs to change to move forward clearly, especially when you're under pressure. All right, so you can head to my website, moonbeammonday.com.au. The link will be right there on the homepage. And of course, I'll include the link in the notes below. So I look forward to seeing you at that masterclass. Remember, as always, when you change your mind, you change your life. I'll see you next time.